Real-time crime centers have become a cornerstone of modern policing, helping agencies connect information faster, improve coordination, and make smarter decisions when seconds matter most. But building or refreshing a center can be complex. Constant Technologies helps simplify the process. Constant has partnered with law enforcement agencies across the country to plan, design, and build real-time crime centers, communications centers, drone operation rooms, and emergency operations centers, spaces that are purpose-built to support today's public safety missions. From American-built operator consoles to advanced video wall systems, we focus on the physical environment and technology infrastructure that brings your data and teams together. Our experienced design team works closely with your agency to create layouts and plans that support current operations and future growth. The result is a command environment where video communications and collaboration come together, helping your team move from reactive to proactive policing. Learn more at constanttech.com and schedule a complimentary design consultation. To get started, contact my friend, Lieutenant Sean Arthur, retired from the Collier County Sheriff's Office, at 239-469-4901. Welcome to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm John Creamer, Deputy Executive Director of FDSA. Each episode, I sit down with law enforcement thought leaders to tackle critical issues shaping the future of public safety. Together, we'll explore key topics that empower law enforcement professionals to navigate challenges, lead with confidence, and advance their careers. Take a pause, gain valuable insights, and lead your career with purpose. Thanks for listening. Hey, welcome back to A Tactical Pause. This is your host, John Creamer. And today we are thrilled to have an old work colleague and an old friend of mine, Michael Abbey. And Mike Abbey and I have known each other, truthfully, since the 80s. And ironically, on some of our other podcasts, Mike, we talk about, for me, all roads lead back to Tallahassee. So I met Mike. I was a high school kid. Mike was a college student, and we worked at a department store called Gaffer's, which was at 2415 North Monroe. And it was in this huge mall called the Tallahassee Mall that now is a state office building. But Gaffer's was the bomb. That was the place to go for all sorts of shopping and sales and stuff like that. It was the biggest department store in town. And when I met Mike, he was working there in loss prevention with a couple other law enforcement officers, or future law enforcement officers, Hank French, Steve Harrelson, and some others. So that's how long I've known Mike. And then, Mike, tell our listeners about you and your law enforcement career and all the paths you've crossed.
I'm a graduate of Florida State University and started at Tallahassee Police Department in 1989. A lot of patrol experience, a lot of training experience, narcotics experience. I did briefly leave Tallahassee Police Department. Went to United States Drug Enforcement Administration because I thought I wanted to be a DEA agent.
I forgot about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Spent about a year with them, finished Quantico, got my permanent duty assignment, realized that was not where I wanted to be, and came back to TPD. Was a sergeant, ran a narcotics unit, and ended up being a FTO sergeant. I was an FTO 3 different times before that, FTO sergeant, and then got promoted to lieutenant. I was on our SWAT team, or TAC, we call it TAC, 3 different times as an entry operator, a negotiator, like you were. You were entry and negotiations, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And then I came back as the team commander when I was a lieutenant. I did 2 tours in our watch office and retired in the watch office.
Okay.
Which is a good place to retire from.
Yeah.
Go back home.
Yeah, so for our listeners, the Tallahassee Police Department is the largest police department, law enforcement agency from Jacksonville across the Panhandle to Pensacola and down to Orlando. So Mike came on in '89, right in the height probably of the crack epidemic, and then lots of things were changing in law enforcement. I'm sure Chief Tucker hired you because that's who hired me. So Chief
That's
Tucker
correct.
was there. That in and of itself was a cultural explosion for the Tallahassee Police Department. And then Mike went on, and every job Mike had was, you're on the front line. And then what we're not really getting into because the this podcast is not necessarily about that, but the TAC team. So you're on the TAC team from rank of an officer, and then came back home and you commanded the team.
Yes.
At some point. Yeah. So it's a monumental. If any of you have ever been on a SWAT team to know what it's like to go from an operator to then becoming the commander, it's a big deal. So I say all this and ask Mike about his background because it's long, it's vast, it's all hands-on stuff. Mike wasn't. Not there's anything wrong with being in a specialized unit, but in the law enforcement culture, there are people that gravitate towards specialized units and kind of hide behind some of these areas. That's their skill set, and some of them don't like being out in the field. And there's other people like me and Mike that would roll over and cry for mercy if you put us in a paper-pushing spot. So that's why I'm setting the stage for what's going to come next. And Mike, you had a phrase, you said it, I think you said it like 2 years ago. Somebody asked you about something, you're like, hey, I got paid to break things for 30 years. So again, setting the stage. So now you retired, and you got called back into action at the Consolidated Dispatch Agency. How did that come to be, and what do you do there? Or what all do you do there?
Well, I've done a lot. So the Director Odom, who's been a guest on your podcast, became the director a few years ago, and Director Odom and I chatted. We've been friends and teammates, co-workers for a long time, and he brought me over as a part-time employee and eventually had me work in the behavioral health and wellness section of our agency, which was a little strange for a former SWAT guy to work wellness. It was not a real good fit at first. I thought this is some squishy stuff, I did get paid to break things before, and now what is this wellness stuff? And then I went to training, and I really love it and believe in it, and peer support, and a lot of the other things that we do. But he's also brought me off the bench, so to speak, a couple of times to work full-time. And the date of the incident that we're talking about, I was running our field training program. And just like in law enforcement, the communications section has got a field training program. So when our recruits finish the academy, they come out to the floor, and they have got a San Jose model-based training program that they must complete in order to be fully certified.
Tell our listeners, I know what the San Jose model is. Tell our listeners what that is.
It's a standardized program that has standardized grading and guidelines for each recruit to complete and for the trainers to follow, so that everybody is treated as closely to the same as they can be.
Okay, and that's a whole other podcast. It provides continuity. Everybody's trained the same way. It's almost like if you will, we're paramilitary. Everybody comes out basically with the same format. So if I tell you to do X, Y, or Z, and then another FTO tells you to do X, Y, Z, we both know, hey, this is what we're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so go ahead.
So the day of the incident, I was we call it CTO, Communications Training Coordinator, and I was out on the floor at about 11:50 a.m., and we were celebrating Communications Week, and I heard somebody say active shooter out on the floor. And normally the floor is pretty quiet, so when somebody barks out from their position, active shooter, it gets everybody's attention. The fire department was there serving pizza to our folks as part of the celebration, and everybody stopped what they were doing. And I looked up on our wall. We have got what we call the board, and it's a big monitor that tells us how many calls are being handled and how many are waiting. And there were over 40 911 calls that were in the queue and not being answered at the time that I looked up. And what that means is when I looked there were 40 people who were waiting to have their 911 call answered, and we did not have enough personnel at that moment to answer those calls.
And how often does something like that happen?
Very rarely. Yeah. That's the most I've ever seen. And what that was it was a barometer of the magnitude of this incident.
Yeah. So this goes. What we're talking about now is this is the incident, the FSU. active shooter incident that happened almost a year ago. It was April 17th, 2025. So the irony is that it's Telecommunicator Week.
Yeah.
And Telecommunicator Week is 1 week out of the year where those of us in the first responder field, we really want to give thanks to the dispatchers because they are the voice in the darkness. They are in a dark room, and these days you don't get to meet them much, but we'd be lost without them.
Absolutely.
I know they have saved my ass plenty of times when I was young and aggressive and not too smart, and they helped bail me out. So the irony of you guys are, serving them lunch and saying thank you, and then you're sitting there, and the board is let me back up. The CDA is this huge room. It's almost kind of Star Trek looking monitors. It's dark in there. There's just technology being fed in at great volumes. But there's this huge board, and it has 911 calls that are coming in right now. It has admin calls. What else is on the board?
It has the number of dispatchers that are available, the number that are on calls, and the number of supervisors that are available.
And there a clock too about how long?
Yes.
Okay. So on this date, everybody's eating lunch. There's never a quiet day. There's never a routine day. Never a dull day.
Matter of fact, they believe you aren't even supposed to say the Q word that you just spoke. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys are doing your thing, and then all of a sudden, from your desk, you were like the CTO supervisor that day.
Yeah.
Kind of. So and for us in the field, Mike was kind of like the watch commander. So he was kind of over the day shift watch commander that day. And his desk was kind of offset from, quote, the floor, and he's sitting right under the sign, right? The desk is still under that.
Yeah, I was offset from the operations manager desk, overlooking the floor when all hell broke loose.
Okay. All right, so, go from there. So you see all these calls coming in, and did you hear somebody say active shooter?
Yeah, I heard somebody say active shooter, and I saw the instructor from our academy classroom come running out of the classroom at the same time and running over to the supervisor's desk in the middle of the room. And immediately when I looked at the board and saw the number up there and heard somebody say active shooter, it was apparent to me that it was likely a real event. Now, for your listeners, lots of times we will get calls where callers say that there is an active shooter, but it's not actually an active shooter. We'll get an in-progress shooting incident like a drug deal gone bad in a parking lot where they're actively shooting at each other, but it is not an active shooter, like a guy with a gun on campus actively seeking victims and murdering them.
Yeah.
Like this incident. And there is for your law enforcement listeners, they know there's a big difference between mutual combatants shooting at each other in a parking lot with a drug deal gone bad and a guy seeking out innocent victims on a college campus and murdering them.
Yeah.
And so it takes a couple of seconds, and we figure out that this is actually a real active shooter incident, and we figure out where it is, and assets begin to go that way.
All right, let me ask you this, Mike. So how many people roughly are working at the CDA on day shift, telecommunicators? How many people are out on the floor?
We'll have 4 to 5 call takers, and we'll have 2 supervisors and 4 people manning the different district radio channels, and 2 people on teletype, 2 people on fire radio.
Okay. So 10 to 12 people, lunchtime. I imagine there's lunchtime spikes, too, with crashes or maybe, well, I don't think bank robberies happen that much anymore. But bank robberies were almost always used to be at lunch back in the day. I'm dating myself. I don't know why that is. But so, and it's Telecommunicator Appreciation Week. These calls go out. And then from there, what happens? So you have all these multiple call takers that are almost in different, not spheres, but, I'm the fire dispatcher. And you're the EMS dispatcher, but most of the activity we're watching right now is in law enforcement. Did these other dispatchers, are they able to pay attention and start ramping up for what's coming for them too? So
one of the things that happens is immediately all of our administrative personnel who are certified as dispatchers, they find out that there's an active shooter, and they come literally running out of the office part of our building, and they don't wait for instructions. They find call-taking positions that are not staffed, and they log on and they begin taking these calls, chipping away at the ever-growing, because it went up way past 40 calls in the queue. And simultaneously, of course, in the law enforcement world, all the law enforcement officers who are hearing that there's an active shooter on campus stop their normal law enforcement activities on patrol. So they're not doing stuff like running guns and driver's licenses on teletype. We have 911 call-taking ability at our 2 teletype positions. So our teletype operators, when they're not busy doing teletype functions, can answer 911. So when their radio traffic drops off because of what's going on in the field, they're answering 911 also.
Okay. So this is like a Marine Corps thing. Everybody's a rifleman.
Yep.
Right? So everybody's a call taker. And
they go back to their core function. The radio traffic drops off on teletype. They start answering 911. Our admin people come out and staff every vacant position, and they all start answering 911 in the admin positions. Now, the other thing that's happening is that it's not just calls about the gunmen that are coming in. There are calls about law enforcement that are coming in because students are panicked. And as you might imagine, all of these law enforcement officers flooding onto campus are not all dressed the same. Some of them are TPD officers. Some of them are the sheriff's department. Some of them are FDLE, DEA, FBI. Some of them are in short pants and load-bearing vests. And the panicked students are seeing plainclothes guys with rifles and flip-flops jump out of unmarked cars, and they're calling 911 when they see that.
Yeah.
And
so you have a plethora of ghost calls coming in too, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And we're getting calls from the press. We're getting calls from parents. And so in the 3 hours from just before noon until when we're calling our portion of this incident basically concluded, our agency handled 1,100 calls.
In three hours.
In 3 hours.
Yeah. It's staggering.
It's a phenomenal feat.
So on top of those things you just talked about, the other thing that for our listeners too is to know that so this happened at Florida State. The call went out as an active shooter. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to tell me like how that came in. Was it from a citizen? Was it from another officer? So you have that, and then you have for listeners that don't know about Tallahassee, you have the Tallahassee Police Department, you have the Leon County Sheriff's Office, you have the Florida State University Police Department, you have the FAMU Police Department, you have the Tallahassee State College Police Department, you have FDLE, you have FDLE Capitol Police, you have HQ at least for a whole ton of state agencies that we don't even really know about anymore because they've been consolidated under certain governors, but a ton of state agencies. And on top of that, federal resources that have FBI, Secret Service has an office here. And then I learned last week that Miami-Dade SWAT was in town also doing training, and they self-deployed as well. And
the Florida Highway Patrol.
And yeah, FHP, yeah, right.
Yep.
So think about that for our listeners. Call comes in, 911 center, and what makes it unique is that the CDA is the 911 center for this area, for this county, but it's got the largest reach of everybody. So every one of those agencies that we just talked about at some point are tied back into the CDA, right? And then you have the calls themselves coming in, the calls that are legit, the ones that you guys have to vet to go, no, this is BS, let's triage that for now. That minor car crash can wait, we're dealing with this. You have all these things going on at once. You have your admin people that are coming in to help, but you also have the sheriff, the police chief, the fire chief, maybe somebody from the EMS chief going, what's going on? Because somebody in your organization is also feeding out information to help with the calls for service. Yeah,
that's an astute observation. So basically, we have a command post that starts to get set up in our organization where our director and some of the heads of organization from EMS and fire, for instance, are there with us trying to get information. And we begin, our director and those folks begin to liaison and share information actively. so that we can try and keep them appraised of what's going on. EMS headquarters and fire headquarters are in the same building as the CDA. So they naturally, as soon as this thing happened, they're going to come upstairs and they're going to be with us. And you also mentioned something else that's important for everybody to understand is that the world didn't stop because this one unbalanced individual decided that he wanted to murder people on FSU's campus. There's still people that went to Home Depot and shoplifted a drill, and some person that backed out of a parking space in the public shopping center and hit somebody else. Yeah. All these other things were still happening, and they generated calls for service that came into our organization. One of the important things to note is that also our organization, our people did very, very well while this was happening. But there were a couple of things that happened that probably that caused a little bit of difficulty. We had some technology issues, for instance, that caused us some difficulty, and it was hard to overcome those.
Well, before you get into that, Mike, so we've kind of set the stage for generically specific about what's going on at the CDA, and at some point we'll probably have somebody from one of these other agencies come on board and talk about it from their perspective as well. But for our listeners, so the call that came in was about a single gunman, right? And he was actively shooting. And tell us about like how many, like the first information is always wrong, but the first information was saying that there's an active shooter on campus. And did the caller indicate how many people have been shot? Tell us more about that call itself and the loose information that came in.
The first call did indicate a lone gunman, but the problem was that there was so much information coming in, and the gunman was moving fast that, and there were other people, like I said, in plain clothes with rifles, etc., that it took a while to figure out that there was only one gunman.
Yeah.
It took a while for law enforcement on the ground to figure that out and filter back that information to everybody else. We had no idea how many victims there were. We at the CDA had no way of figuring that out. The law enforcement officers on the ground did a phenomenal job of finding victims, triaging those victims, and getting them to a casualty collection point and getting them out of there. U.S. Marshal here locally spearheaded that. And
was that Marty?
Yes, it was Marty West, and I listened to him on the radio. Gave me goosebumps hearing him getting the ambulances out of there and stuff like that.
Yeah, Marty West is a U.S. Marshal that's been in, Leon County since I was back in robbery back in the 90s, and he's a living icon. So I got chill bumps because we've been in instances with Marty before too. So to hear his voice come on the radio would all of a sudden you're like, oh, somebody's in control. They got this.
And I laughed too because he didn't call the ambulances. He called them buses.
Yeah.
With a South Georgia drawl.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. So FSU Police Department has their own computer-aided dispatch system, right?
Yes.
They have their own CAD. You have your own CAD. These calls are coming into the 911 center, your center, the CDA.
Yes.
So before we get into like some of the technology glitches, how does that work? So if the calls come in, are you guys are running the CAD? Are you guys running the call and you're dumping stuff to their CAD? Or did everybody switch over and now or is this part of the problem?
That's part of the problem.
Okay.
Is that FSU was getting their calls. They were running their calls. They're dispatching their officers on campus initially. They did share information with us. We shared information with them. We're getting calls, and we're dispatching officers also. It wasn't until Officer Sean Wyman, who was at the edge of campus, heard shots being fired and said, shots fired, I'm going. And ended up being one of the first officers there that we took an active role with dispatching anything and did something called patching channels. And for the listeners, patching channels means that either within an organization, like the CDA can during an emergency take two separate radio talk groups or channels and put them together so all the officers in the field don't have to switch channels, or two different organizations like FSU and the CDA did that day can patch the channels so everybody is on the same channel without having to do anything. And that's what happened that day, is FSU and the CDA patched the channels so that all the FSU officers and the responding TPD officers that were on that primary channel that Jamie Peterson was working were on the same radio channel. Bang, in seconds. They're all on the same channel. And at some point, it was determined that the Tallahassee Police Department was going to be primary. I don't know how that was determined, but at some point it was determined that the Tallahassee Police Department was going to be primary. So because the Tallahassee Police Department was going to be primary and we dispatch for the Tallahassee Police Department, the CDA took over as the primary dispatching entity.
Okay. So the reason I'm having you explain this is it's a big ball of spaghetti, right? And especially here. So in other places, there might be 2 or 3 police departments and a sheriff in a county, and in those cases, 9 times out of 10, the municipalities just going to be like, hey, this happened in our city, we got it. Or the sheriff's going to step in and use his or her constitutional authority and be like, hey, it's in my county, we got it. Or let's work together. But here, because we have all these entities going on, I don't think there's a lot of finger pointing out. It's more like, hey, more like people drawing with their finger, go, hey, can we have this? Who's primary? And what comes into play from the investigative standpoint is all those CAD notes, every note typed in by a call taker, by a dispatcher, somebody else, all becomes evidence. It all becomes part of the timeline. It's how we build something like the document you and I are going over, the after-action report, which there had to be many of these, probably one from each agency and then one collectively for a group, theoretically. So the CAD and the CAD notes from 2 different dispatch centers, FSU's and CDA, that comes real important. And same with all the recorded phone calls and things like that. So from an incident command position, and your former, when you were an attack commander, I'm trying to paint the picture for what a listener would know. I mean, this is effing chaos. This is controlled chaos, and somebody somewhere's got to step up and be like, hey, we got it. And then all of a sudden we start this conga line of, okay, we've worked incidents like this before. This is how it works. Yeah. Right. And but in the beginning, it's just chaos.
And that was happening in the field. Okay. And so while this was happening in the field, law enforcement administrators in the field making that decision that we got this, and then the CDA was made primary radio, I became much like a caged animal.
Yeah.
The lead instructor for our academy stepped out to take over a radio channel on the floor, and I stepped into the classroom, turned the radio on in the classroom, and narrated this entire event for our brand new dispatchers that were in training. One of the most difficult things that I've done, because really all I wanted to do is go get a machine gun, check out a machine gun from somewhere, put on some body armor, and get a radio and go find the bad guy.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I did not want to be in there with a bunch of dispatchers in training narrating this. I wanted to go 10-8 dispatch, send me the call.
Yeah.
And go find bad guy.
Yeah, but now you have the emotional intelligence to realize those people needed your expertise at the CDA more than in the field. But I like you, I told you offline that my son works at Florida State, and I was in Tallahassee when this went out, and then my daughter was a graduate of Florida State, and we all started getting texts about an active shooter, and then tried to call my son, like, hey, are you safe? He didn't answer. So my first thought was, hey, I'm still a reserve deputy. I got a gun and a badge. Giddy up.
Yeah.
And then my EI kicked in. I'm like, I'm going to be part of the problem. I'm going to be one of these dumbasses out here walking around with a gun with no identifier on to do what? I'm just going to muddy the water. Let me sit out. And it was very hard for me to do that. I can't imagine how hard it would have been for you to hear and see the action coming in and then have to sit there, and go, this is what's happening, you know, and answer what might have felt like to you at the time silly questions, but to them they had no idea what was going on. Right?
Oh no, they were great. They were great. They were asking good questions. They were plugged in. and a lot of them were wellness-related questions, like how do we work through this, and how do the officers handle this in the field, and stuff like that. It was very. The one that was having the most difficult time in the room was me.
Yeah.
I wanted to be 10A.
Yeah, because you know what should be happening, what should have happened, should be happening, what will be happening.
Yeah.
Right. And you want to. I would be there. You would want to be there to button it up.
Yeah.
Like, hey, don't forget to this. Hey, I got that. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that you would be, like a tiger in a cage.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a pretty good description.
Yeah.
So that was going on, and just so you know, it's also very difficult to narrate this because at any given time, both in the field and in our organization, there were 100 different things happening at once. There was never any time that there was just one thing happening. So as I tell the story, it's not adequate for me in any way. This narrative is not adequate to describe what was happening.
Yeah.
Our organization was running at Redline. The performance was excellent, but we were running at Redline just like law enforcement was in the field. And the performance was excellent by everybody.
Yeah.
But there was a lot happening. Just like on any SWAT call out where you can stand at the command post and it seems seamless, but you got your entry guys, your snipers, your negotiators, your logistics guys, your bomb guy running the robot, all of this stuff happening all at once.
Yeah.
It may look like, hey, there's not much going on, but there's a whole lot going on.
Yeah, there's intricate, life-altering decisions being made that never even bubble up.
Yep.
It's some well-trained operator down at the bottom that's like, nope, that's not important. This is. Same thing's happening there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was happening every second.
Okay. Let's talk about. So we talked about you being there, and how things kind of broke, and the irony of, again, to me, it's ironic that it was Telecommunicator Appreciation Week. I mean, that's tragically funny to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But because it just shows how we need those folks, and we need them to be on their A game. We talked about the voluminous calls that came in, all the people that are on the boots on the ground. We started talking about technology between. I mean, no other agency here has a CAD system, right? It's just FSU and the CDA CAD, right?
I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, I think back in the day,
I can't speak to that for sure.
Tallahassee State College had a small CAD, a console, and I think either they did or they were going over to FSU. But anyway, or to CDA. But the two largest ones are in town, so you're not really working with any other CAD system. It's just you guys and FSU.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can't speak to any of the state agencies, for instance,
okay.
FHP, FWC. They were all there, and I can't tell you whether they have CAD or not.
Okay. So let's talk about technology. So, I mean, there used to be something called Moore's Law or Moore's Hammer that I think it was every 18 months technology is now obsolete, right? And now that is sped up so quickly.
Yeah.
So the CAD system that you have, and this is just a fact. It's a Motorola Solutions product called Premier One, right? At the time that it was installed and created, it was supposed to have been their flagship CAD system, and it's supposed to be big enough and technologically advanced to run multiple large incidents like this. So that's how it was made, and that's how it was implemented. But that was 20 years ago, maybe. Okay, and of course, there's been upgrades to the system through then. However, it's still an old system. It's a used car that has new parts put on it periodically.
Yeah, it's a Crown Victoria that is a patrol car in present day. That's a good way to put it.
Great way to look at it.
It's
the job done. But
it was a great patrol car when it first came out, and it's held together with baling wire and duct tape right now.
Yeah, and your system is that way. Okay, so as all your staff, your people are reaching redline capacity with their work product, with their comprehension product, and maybe even with some internal wellness product. Side note, that also brings a lot of people like me and you to our A game, right? We thrive on, let's do it. But you also have people that are like, oh, my God, this is too much. So we have all these things going on Redline at the same time. What's going on with the technology? What other stresses came out of the technology, good and bad?
So a whole bunch of new radios just came online in our jurisdiction with the Sheriff's Office and with Tallahassee Police Department.
Those are the Motorola APX Next radios that are supposed to be state-of-the-art.
They are. Yeah. That is correct.
Yeah.
And part of the great thing about these radios is that you no longer have to rely on GPS that's built into the patrol cars or accessories to the patrol cars, anything like that. They're in the radio. It's a GPS chip in the radio. And for those agencies that don't have these radios, you don't know what you're missing out on because, you get out, you get on a foot pursuit, dispatch can tell, and your zone partner and your sergeant can tell right where you are by where your radio is. Great stuff.
You can even see it on the radio, and you as a commander or a sergeant or an officer, you can set up a perimeter because you can see where your squad's listed. Yeah, so it's state-of-the-art.
Fantastic. Except
Go ahead, yeah.
all of that information gets funneled through the CAD. And these radios are set for 15-second updates and push-to-talk updates.
GPS updates, is that what you mean?
That's correct.
Okay.
So now we have an active shooter on a major college campus in the United States. And what do you think happens to every person that's got a radio in our jurisdiction?
Yeah, they all come on.
They all turn their radios on.
Even if they're not here, because that Motorola radio works anywhere in the world.
They turn their radio on because they want to hear what's going on. They turn their radio on because they're en route to the incident. And a lot of them are using push-to-talk features, even if they're not on the talk group where the incident is happening. And all of that is going through the CAD and updating their locations. So even if your 15-second update happened 3 seconds ago, you push to talk now, it updates again.
So why does that matter when you're in a large capacity, when you're in a large dynamic setting like this FSU shooter?
Well, back up now. We just staffed every position that our agency had with call takers. And now you also have people in the field, and all of those call takers are inputting information in the CAD. The radios are inputting information in the CAD every few seconds, every other second, depending on when they're talking. And now you've got officers in the field that are probably utilizing their computers and inputting information in the CAD. And you've got all of this information that is getting dumped in the CAD. Imagine an 8-inch fire hose pushing information through a standard soda straw. And eventually what happened is we got about 15 minutes into the incident, we began to get a substantial slowdown in CAD functionality. And by 20 minutes into it, we had such a slowdown that it was impeding the ability of the dispatchers to put notes in the call by as much as 15 to 35 seconds, which may not seem like a big deal, but when you've got 65 911 calls waiting in a queue to be answered, 35-second delay in the ability to put notes into a call is a big deal.
Yeah, and a couple things too, Mike. So we had a guest on, a friend of mine named Josh Bitsko. Josh is a retired captain from Las Vegas, and he led part of the 1 October sniper event in the Mandalay Bay. And this is one of the same issues they had out there. I don't know who their vendor were, but so our listeners have heard some of this before. And then secondly, let's go back. So you have voice data coming in from a 911 caller. You have GPS data coming in from next generation 911 coming in from a caller. Then you have the call taker, him or herself, that is entering that data on top of that. Same with every radio. Every radio is disseminating metadata, locational data, and on top of that, every radio user in the field is potentially keying up and saying something. And then when they key up and say something, it's redundant information from, right?
That's
and
correct.
You have the real-time crime center loading stuff into the CAD system.
That's correct.
And
I hadn't even touched on the real-time crime center yet.
So where I'm going is you're at capacity.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so there's an unintended consequence with having all this data.
by the time our tech people got involved, and of course when we noted the slowdown, they immediately called our tech people. By the time our tech people got involved and called Motorola, we were at 70% of processing capability for the CPU.
On this one incident.
On this one incident.
70% of your capacity for the entire system, for the entire city, county dispatch system was on
correct.
this one incident, let alone if we had a sister incident of magnitude.
Yes.
Roger that. Okay.
So that was a major a major problem. So our tech people worked with Motorola, and they began doing stuff in the background that was able to improve some of the processing and get back some of the speed. It did not get back to full processing power until much later in the afternoon as the incident began to wind down. I assume that probably had to do with people getting off of the radio and our volume of calls going down.
And we'll be right back. Every day you put your life on the line to protect and serve. Who's protecting you? United Badges Insurance Services operates as a dedicated resource for the first responder public safety community. Serving thousands of first responders, United Badges offers a wide range of products including commercial insurance, group accident and health insurance, and personal insurance such as auto, home, renters, rental properties, vacation properties, boat, motorcycle, RVs, flood, and umbrella. United Badges serves active and retired public safety personnel, public safety agencies, public safety associations, public safety support businesses, and public safety families and friends. Experience the United Badges difference. Call 800-566-5990 or visit unitedbadges.com to request your free insurance quote today. United Badges Insurance Services is a proud strategic partner of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. Applicants are individually underwritten by each respective insurance carrier and subject to insurance policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states. Promotional material for descriptive purposes only. Now back to the show. What other technology worked or could have worked better?
Well, the technology, really, as far as technology, that was the only thing that we had problems with.
Okay.
But as far as things that could work better, our standard operating procedure is that we assign a secondary dispatcher to major incidents like this. And we were a little slow on pulling the trigger on this. And the reason we assign a secondary dispatcher is so that it's just like in negotiations. When you were a negotiator, we always gave you a secondary negotiator because why?
You can't do it all.
Yeah, you can't hear everything.
Right. You miss cues and nuances and
That's correct.
Things. Somebody's trying to feed you information. You can't get it all.
Right. And it's for the same reason. So the secondary dispatcher listens to everything that's going on. They don't talk on the radio. They help put CAD notes in for the primary dispatcher. And we got to be faster on getting that set up. We got to have somebody as soon as a major incident like this jumps off, we got to have a secondary dispatcher.
In your knowledge, is that protocol at most PSAPs and most agencies?
Yeah, that's beyond my scope of understanding. I don't know.
But it is funny how it falls back to when we were negotiators. We had a primary, secondary, and a tertiary.
Yep.
And because one person you just can't handle all the data coming in, you're going to miss something. So
it's too much to process.
Yeah.
And in this case, the primary function is for that secondary dispatcher to listen in case the primary misses something and to put all the notes in that the primary has got coming in because it's just way too much.
Yeah.
There's so much traffic on that channel that there's no way that they'll be able to put all the notes in.
Okay. Now, how about this, Mike? In this case, there were victims. EMS, fire, how does that come into play from the CDA side? So if usually in a critical incident in the beginning, it's a law enforcement show. Then at some point, it might be early on, it might be later on, there's also a rescue component. And then at some point, there's also a medical examiner component. How does all that work? I mean, because you can't, like, for our listeners, Jamie's going to be on the podcast later, and we're going to talk about what it was like to be the someone that was there and take that call and dispatch through it. But again, Jamie's limited in what he can see you do and function, but weave into this like fire and EMS.
Well, I probably should have, backing up, I probably should have told the listeners how our center is set up because it's not set up like a lot of dispatch centers.
Yeah, go ahead. And if they've listened before, they've heard David Odom talk about this, but this is a good double tap on this.
So we're a combined consolidated dispatch center. We dispatch for all of Leon County, and we dispatch all law enforcement for Leon County as far as the sheriff's office and municipal police, but we also dispatch fire and EMS. EMS dispatches their own calls. They have their own personnel that dispatch that, but they sit with us. So in one room, we have EMS dispatch, fire dispatch, law enforcement dispatch for the entire county. And it's important for us to understand how that setup is, because once the rescue starts happening, once law enforcement has contained the scene and has got a casualty collection point and a secure route in and out of that, in and out of the scene, then the fire and EMS folks are right there. They're on the same CAD. They see the same notes that the law enforcement officers are seeing. And basically what's happened is the dispatcher it does what's called cloning the call. And it's a copy. They copy the call in the same CAD over to the other agencies. They get directions to where they need to go to the casualty collection point. They go get the people and they get them out of there.
Okay. All seamless, all things that you guys train on all the time.
Yep.
That, again, most people would never know.
Obviously, the deceased are going to be there for a while. That's going to be a crime scene and not a rescue. Yeah. And obviously, unfortunately, but the ones that are injured, they got scooped up, brought to a casualty collection point, and then right out of there.
Okay. What other? There's so many moving parts and pieces. We could probably talk about this all day, but in the time we have left, what other things from your standpoint? I mean, you're the author of the CDA's After Action Report, and I don't know if this is public record yet or not, but at some point it will be, because this is going to be a great training guide for somebody. And I do think our listeners or other people might start paying a visit and come see what you guys did, what it was like, and go from there. But what other things in this document are things that our listeners should know about? I mean, because you had hundreds of moving parts and pieces. You have all these 911 calls coming in. You have different forms of technology talking to each other. One brand, one vendor is talking with another. So there's these agnostic connections between all the information that's coming in. Then you have the huge human element. And it sounds like to me from the human element, we really didn't skip a beat.
Yeah, I think it's important. So I'm a training guy. I spent my career doing basically three things: training, narcotics enforcement, and SWAT stuff. And I think that when something like this happens, you're coming back to your training, just like any other critical incident. This is no different than anything else. You get in a fight in the field, and you're only going to rise to the level of your training. If your training is garbage, well, that's what you're going to do in the fight. You cannot expect to all of a sudden be Superman if every time that you went to in-service training, you sat on the sidelines and played on your phone. And that's the same with our people at the CDA. So they train hard. They get a lot of really, really stringent training with stringent guidelines. And we have upped our game considerably from the time they go through 236 hours of training in the academy to the 4 different positions with the San Jose model that we talked about, and in-service training, et cetera. Okay. And they have gotten training on critical incidents and chain of command and everything. When an incident like this happens, they are rising to the level of their training. Not only that, but we hire some fantastic people and have got fantastic leadership. All of that stuff that you do ahead of time, you're preparing for an incident like this and hoping it never happens.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the best things that happened is that we luckily have been working for a long time putting all of the pieces in place to make sure that we were ready for something like this.
You have, and there's you see me, our listeners can't see this, but I was frantically looking for a quote. I just don't remember the author, but the quote was, you do not rise to the level of your expectations, but you fall to the level of your training. And that's why training is so important. Good training is so important.
Yep.
Like you said, like when we were on patrol in the day, and I'm not being ugly, but you see a fat body that didn't want to get involved in defensive tactics training. They would rather just sit on the edge. But later on, that same officer who sat on the edge didn't want to do the training Murphy's Law is alive and well.
Oh, yeah.
Murphy's going to come say hi, and if you didn't participate and go full speed in the training, it's going to bite you in the ass.
Murphy's an SOB.
Yeah.
I've said that for years. Murphy's an SOB, and he will find you wherever you are.
And when you're not ready, when you least expect it.
And
that happens at the CDA.
Yep. He sneaks
well.
around in our building all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But that's one of the biggest things is our leadership did extremely well. Our director was out there interacting, but not interfering. Interacting and not interfering, letting our rank and file do what they needed to do. He was sharing information with his chain of command, getting information in real time, and letting our people do what they had been trained to do.
Yeah.
Our people, every one of them that was physically able to engage and do something was out there doing their job. It was fantastic to see. We had a couple of things that we could do better next time. I mentioned one of them, like with the secondary dispatcher. But for the most part, phenomenal, the efforts that these folks did.
Yeah.
Your next guest, Jamie Peterson, he stood on his feet for the entirety of this incident. He was standing. He wasn't sitting. He was he had his position in the standing desk position and stood and dispatched this entire thing. Barely took any kind of drink or anything the entire time while he rocked and rolled through this entire thing.
Yeah, it's in his DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me say one thing about leadership, too, is where I worked when I left TPD, where I worked in Central Florida, command staff wore white shirts, right? And it's real important because the real work would happen when the white shirts left.
Yeah.
Right? So when the white shirts left, then all the superfluous questions would stop being asked, and you could get down to doing your job. So what it sounds like it was with the command staff, the expectations at the CDA was they weren't coming over to ask these esoterical questions. They were just coming over going, what can I help you with? And get out of the way.
Well, some of the other leadership things came afterwards. There are a lot of organizations that are hesitant to take deep dives into their performance afterwards.
Yeah.
And, our organizational leadership is not afraid to do that. This after action is 18 pages long and very detailed. And for example, one of the things that came out of it was that at the time of the incident, we did not have detailed floor plans in our map database that's attached to our CAD of the buildings on the FSU campus. Mm. Well, if our leadership was afraid for us to take a deep dive into our own performance, then we would still be working without detailed maps. But as soon as I started doing this deep dive and we found out about it, we worked with our technology counterparts, and as I'm speaking right now, we have detailed maps of the entire campus in all of the buildings. Yeah.
See, that's excellent. See, that goes back to, the 9/11 Commission, with silos. And even to this day, and this is a rambling story, but I'll land the plane. I get to travel all over the state of Florida and sometimes all over the Southeast to different law enforcement agencies, dispatch centers, fire training centers, things like that. And we are still very much living in silos.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say something, but I don't want to offend anybody. We're living in silos that should have been kicked over decades ago. And what I've seen occasionally when I travel the state is there are organizations that are just transparent. And it's not about the director, the CEO, the leader, the sheriff. It's about, if this happens in our community, we're ready. And in order to do that, it's not about my ego. It's about us and our performance level and that training. So that is refreshing to see here, is that's what's so unique. And that is the blessing and the curse of the CDA, right, is because they are Switzerland. And I think sometimes the curse is they get forgotten. And that's why I was so glad to hear Telecommunicators Week is such a big deal.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's so many places that are still in silos, and it looks like here, when you guys self-discover that you might be in a silo, there's at least emotional intelligence from the leadership around here to go, hey, wait, we don't want that. Let's get on the same page. So when this happens again, it's completely seamless, and it will happen again, right?
Yeah, and there was no interference from leadership when when they turn me loose on this, they know I'm kind of a bulldog, and that most of my career was breaking things, and so they turned me loose to do this, and they didn't give me any guardrails and said, "Hey, you can do this, but don't."
Yeah.
They just said, "Do it."
Yes.
And
the way I read this document, it's an after action almost / staff inspection. Because you've pointed out the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's not a lot of ugly. There's things that can be done better.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of ugly in there. So, in my experience too, Mike, I don't know of a lot of dispatch agencies that do after actions. Do you know of many times you've done an after action for the CDA?
At every major incident that we've had, there's been an after action. I've written multiple of them. The agency policy is that the shift command does an after action when they have an incident on shift, and then every time we have a major incident, we do it. So when we've had a power outage or a 911 brief 911 outage or something like that, every time we do a dive into it and we do an after action.
So
lessons learned.
Okay, so for our listeners, what happens with those after actions?
They get shared. First of all, they get studied by the executive staff, and then they get shared with the rest of the agency so that everybody understands what exactly happened and then what the lessons are to be learned and how to recover from them.
So would this be is this something that you guys would talk about? I mean, because we're coming up on a year, and some of that information probably might have been too fresh, but I feel like this is the time now. Has this already been shared with the staff? Have there been maybe some breakout sessions, to people to go, hey, here's the after action report, and here's a presentation that go with it. So let's tell you, here's what happened for all, because you have a turnover rate at the CDA.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it is in today's workforce. You have a turnover rate, and some of these people don't even know. They didn't go to Florida State. They're not from Tallahassee. What shooting at FSU? Is this something that you would do periodically to go, hey, let's have a refresher on this? This is a pretty damn big deal.
There's an in-service coming up, actually, that Jamie Peterson is teaching on active shooters, and I believe this is going to be a component of that. I know I've shared this with him as he's creating the lesson plan.
Okay, very good.
So everybody's going to be exposed to it.
Last sleeve, if you will, is wellness. So for Jamie and for everybody working that day, what exists at the CDA? What offerings exist at the CDA for people that are like, hey, I knew the person that was killed, or I knew the motorman that took this person into custody, or I was this, that, or the other. What wellness components are in place that can be used?
The Consolidated Dispatch Agency is one of the only dispatch agencies that I know of that's got as vibrant behavioral health and wellness program as it does. We have a full-time coordinator for the program who is a licensed therapist on staff. We have a part-time, her assistant is also a therapist. And then we have a variety of offerings that go along with that. We have a very successful peer support program that has been used for a number of years now. I used to be the peer support coordinator, and I've been doing peer support for some time now. We have, of course, EAP that we work with, that we refer people to on a regular basis, and EAP gets used a lot. We also have got all kinds of stuff we work with the Tallahassee Memorial Hospital with therapy animals that come into the building. We have seated massages. We have a quiet room that people can go to and sit in. If Kim was here, she'd probably smack me right now because I'm sure.
No, you've done good. So again, for our listeners, and you don't know this, but that's one of the things we talked about with Director Odom. And then I've had every other guest on the podcast is about resilience or about wellness. So almost everything that one of our guests that would recommend, you're doing it.
Okay.
So you're killing it, and Kim's killing it, and Dave's killing it. So
we also do critical incident stress debriefs, and we partner with other agencies in the area and assist them with that, and the other agencies partner with us. That's one of the really good things about the wellness in Leon County is that Leon County Sheriff's Office, Tallahassee Police Department, the fire department, and EMS all work very closely together. And whenever there's a critical incident, we come together and work. Our wellness teams and peer support groups work together. And if there's a critical incident, stress debrief that needs to be done, or there's a critical incident in the field and peer support teams need to be deployed, we will work together and go and do all of that together.
Yeah, that's amazing. And see, that doesn't happen. That's one of the things I was talking about too, Director Odom, is there's a lot of, we talk about dispatchers, telecommunicators are the first of the first, but the CDA also has a lot of first of the first. Your wellness program, again, from my travels across the state, is the first of its kind that has the depth and the breadth and the width. Some of the other things that aren't germane to what we're talking about today, but you're the first in many, many areas. Personal question, what do you do for wellness? Like you were there for this. You were there. You ingested all this. It probably unpacked 30-something years of memories, right? So what do you do about that?
Oh, I drink really heavily.
No, you don't.
You didn't even let that resonate.
No, that's not true.
No, I am an avid photographer and a hiker. I also do woodworking. I've got a bunch of different hobbies, and I hike almost every day with my camera. And so pretty much 7 days a week, I am out in the field somewhere hiking, shooting pictures. I have a blog that I write a wellness blog for first responders and veterans. A lot of my photographs go on that first responder blog, and I'm taking pictures almost every day and hiking, and that's my primary.
How does somebody find your blog?
Well, it is On Beyond Blue, all one word, onbeyondblue.com.
Okay, and that's the link that takes them right into the
takes it right there.
Okay, and in your blog, are there past entries in there, or is it just current, like from today forward?
Chronological. So when you hit post, the button post, it's the most recent, and then you scroll down and it goes to the next most recent, and so on and so forth.
Why do you think that's important for you to do that? Why do you write a blog?
I think it's important. First of all, I want to share my experience, especially since retirement, about what I learned about what we did in our career, and lessons learned about a lot of things that weren't right.
Yeah.
You know, I started in the 80s, and the philosophy in law enforcement was suck it up, buttercup, compartmentalize, don't worry about that severed head and the burned body over there, get 10-8 and handle the next call. And, that did a lot of damage.
Yes.
Not only to me, but to thousands, tens of thousands of other first responders across this country. And then when we started doing critical incident stress debriefs, we did them incorrectly. And they were pointless endeavors. And then people started retiring, and after doing what we did, and they had these moments like I did where they were standing around and not knowing what in the world to do with all of this that they got left with.
Yeah.
And so I had the luxury of getting a lot of training and being able to understand what to do with it and what I experienced. And so I thought I would share some of that and see if I could help people.
Well, the reason, I'm asking this to you, I'm putting you on the spot. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, you're fine.
But
I thrive on the spot.
So a lot of what we do for the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association, and I have been given a wide berth by our board and by my executive director, and I'm extremely thankful for that, is research on resiliency, research for not just first responders and military, but all the disciplines in the first respondership. And along the way, I don't have a blog. I do a lot of writing. I put most of my stuff on LinkedIn, and most of it is just for me. I'm thrilled that anybody reads it. And I'm also thrilled when somebody's like, hey, can you come present this? So where I'm going with that, Mike, is that most of us, whether we know it or not, we came into law enforcement with adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs. most people that get into cops or get into law enforcement, I can't speak for the other fields, that get into law enforcement came in with a pretty high ACE score. They went through some shit as a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whatever happened to them as a kid has either brought them to law enforcement because they want justice, not in a mean-spirited way, but they want to make sure nobody else is victimized by somebody.
Moral injury.
Yeah, by a moral injury. So they came here to make sure it didn't happen again. Or they come into law enforcement almost with a mission just to be a good servant and a good human being. And then we have bad apples. There's also a very tiny segment of people that come in here because of the wrong reasons. They usually get weeded out quickly after they make a mess. But those other two categories, as years go by, they run off the wheels. They run out of runway. They can't white-knuckle it anymore. That's where I found myself near the end of my career, right? I came into this with a whole bunch of stuff from childhood and other things. And then when I got into law enforcement, I was drawn towards I want to be in the most violent, bloody thing out there because of stuff that happened to me as a kid. I'm in. Robberies, homicides, suicides, all these things, the more the better. Being drawn to TAC, going from a negotiator to entry, all these things. I made, number one, it made me feel. Number two, it gave me a mission. But after a while, the mission took me captive, right?
So let me tell you, when I do presentations, I bring a bag of rocks in the classroom with me.
Yeah.
Big bag, tactical briefcase filled with rocks, and they're a little bit bigger than silver dollars or challenge coins, and they all have either a T or a VT written on them for trauma or vicarious trauma. And I hand them out to people in the classroom and tell them to stuff them in their pockets. And I the way I put it for these folks is everybody comes to the job with their own trauma or their own vicarious trauma in their pockets. And you're all going to pick up more rocks as you go along. Mm-hmm. And unless you come up with healthy ways to empty your pockets along your career, peer support, hobbies, support networks, stuff like that, sooner or later you're going to stuff that one rock in your pocket, and it's going to tear those 5'11" pants to pieces, and all those rocks are going to come tumbling out, and it's going to be a really bad day.
Yeah.
And it's happened. It happened to me, and it's happened to a lot of different people. And it's one of my passions, why I write a blog. It's why when I public speak, it's why I'm willing to share the kinds of things that I share, because I don't want it happening to other people. And there's a lot of people who are who have the not me. I'm a tough guy. I can compartmentalize. Somebody told me the other day, this stuff doesn't hurt me.
Oh, they're full of shit.
Yeah. I researched the other day. The average law enforcement officer in the United States experiences 178 to 900 traumas in a career.
Yeah.
178 to 900 traumas just in a career. The average citizen in the United States experiences 3.6 traumas in a lifetime. So for a law enforcement officer to sit there across the table from me and say, this stuff doesn't bother me, I'm sorry, I throw the BS flag on that.
Yeah.
They're damaged.
Yeah.
And they're covering that damage up.
Yeah, they don't want to be misperceived. Wrapping this back into what we're talking about, the reason I ask you, because I know you and about the blog and about your hiking and photography. So the wellness piece, too, for the CDA. Again, dispatchers, I can't tell if that's the right phrase anymore to call somebody a dispatcher or a telecommunicator. I don't know what the – I think along the way somebody made dispatcher like a less than word, but to me it's not. I mean, you're not just
I think PSCO is the really the best label, but it sounds so sterile. It's public safety communications operator, but it sounds so sterile to me.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. But those folks, what you do for that organization and what happened here with this FSU shooting event, and again, we're not talking about Tallahassee Fire, Tallahassee Police, Leon County, FSU, and all the host of ancillary agencies. We're talking about the after accident happened there, and it was a seamless for the most part, seamless operation response, some technical glitches that you guys are working on. And there's probably some other things that you could have done better. But I think we touched on the biggest parts. And then I guess I wanted to land the plane with the wellness piece. And that's why I was asking what you did, because I also know that you're a role model. And surely you're sharing that with the people that are there. So they know they're not going home. They're not going to eat themselves to death, or they're not going to pick up some risky behavior to deal with what they're dealing with. And that hiking, being outside, being in the sun, taking photographs, talking, walking, those are much more beneficial ways to deal with stress than, binging a TV show and doing other unhealthy things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And drinking a fifth of Jack Daniels while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also make use of our peer support. If I need to talk, then I make use of our peer support. I'm not shy about it.
Yeah, good. Good. So we're at a phase in life, right?
Yeah.
Where we're like you and I, and almost every guest we've had on are lifelong learners. And I don't think there's no shame in my game. I'll tell anybody who wants to hear, here's how I got here. It ain't pretty, but if I can tell you what not to do, and you can buy some more time and you can finish strong, I'll tell you. I mean, our job is, hey, my brother's about to get into a hole, let me pull him out.
Yep.
Because there was somebody pulled me out of a hole, even though I didn't think anybody could see I was in there, because I thought I got in there on purpose, nice and quiet. That's what we're doing. The gray in our hair is for a reason. We're telling people, hey, look, that's not going to work. You can do it if you want. You can do it. It's not going to work. These things work.
So I put it this way. When I'm talking to the SWAT guys, the big knuckle draggers, I tell them, think back to your basic SWAT school. In basic SWAT school, they told you priority of life. That's your number one priority, is to preserve life above all else. So what we're talking about is no different than that.
Yeah.
It's no different than that. If you're about to make decisions that are going to screw you up and shorten your lifespan, give you heart conditions, cause a stroke, all of the other things that we know that carrying around these rocks for the rest of your life is going to do, then, hey, I'm helping you out by telling you, use peer support. Stop drinking so much. Why are you eating that double cheeseburger when you have a healthier choice? Yeah. You're a big SWAT guy. Just because you're 24 years old now and you can do that with little effect on your body doesn't mean it doesn't have long-term effects.
Yeah.
Let's figure out some healthier ways to handle this.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mike, we could keep talking all day, and maybe we should come back and just talk about wellness at some point.
I'd be happy to.
But to sum this up, this is one of the bigger events that's happened in Tallahassee in a long time. This is one of the most intricate events that's happened in Tallahassee in a long time as well, and there'll be another one that's going to be bigger. It's going to be more intricate. It's not going to go as well. But the reason we're talking about it today is we've really been trying to showcase what PCSOs, public safety communications officers, telecommunicators, and 911 operators and dispatchers do. They're the someone that's going to answer the phone when somebody calls 911. They're a someone. They're a father. They're a son. They're a husband. They're a wife. And their job is just like law enforcement, where the majority of the time it's boredom, but within seconds it becomes terror. And there's some bad, bad shit going on, and they are the voice for it. So this after action that you created highlights the heroism and the well-oiled machine there. The second part of this podcast is going to be with Jamie, who was the dispatcher that day for the FSU shooting. So thanks for coming in. Thanks for being a mentor to me all these years. And I'll let you know what we do with this next.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for listening to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. FDSA proudly serves over 25,000 deputy sheriffs across the state with legal benefits, vital training, and financial assistance in times of need. You can listen to previous episodes at fldeputysheriffs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and encourage your friends, coworkers, and those in the law enforcement community to listen as well. To learn more about the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association and how we serve those who serve, visit our website at fldeputysheriffs.org.